Welcome to all of our fellow Demon Slayers. We have an exciting Diablo 4 news update for you today, and so if you're a fan of this iconic action role-playing game series, then get ready to join us on another journey because there's a new upcoming open beta on the horizon. So we've got everything here you need to know about Diablo 4 to keep you up to speed, including a new look at some of the endgame systems, dungeons, new rewards in this upcoming beta, world boss tweaks and more. But that's not all, because we're also going to be bringing you the latest updates on the player feedback and how it's shaping the game's development. So grab your weapons and sharpen your skills because we're about to dive into the world of Diablo 4. And without wasting any of your time with nonsense, let's get right into it with the new open beta details, because it is starting on May 12th and will run until May 14th. They're dubbing this open beta as a server slam, so I'm hoping this will help them make sure that they're ready for the full game's release, since we all know that server issues on Blizzard releases is not something we want to have to deal with again. This next beta though will feature all 5 classes once again. We can explore the whole first zone of Fractured Peaks and progress through the prologue and Act 1 of the game. So basically we'll have access to the same content as in the previous betas, but with 2 major changes. The first change is that they say this is a new build version where they've integrated the learnings and player feedback from recent Diablo 4 betas to make changes and reflect how the game will feel, so this time we can experience how the final game and the launch version will be. So with plenty of balance changes and tweaks, it'll be fun to see how our favourite classes feel to play now. It's also another chance to play and level up the different classes to find our favourite, or now our new favourite after these changes. However, there is another twist with a cool reward. And a great way to reward us if you're enjoying this video is by hitting that like button, because it really does help. But going back to Diablo 4, the world boss Ashava this time will be spawning much more frequently at every 3 hours. Additionally, if you reach level 20 with a character and beat the world boss, you'll get a brand new reward, a mount trophy called the Cry of Ashvara. If you've ever played the Witcher games, you'll be familiar with having a trophy saddled to your horse, and this is much the same kind of thing. It gives us an ornate and decorated version of the Horn of Ashvara itself to flex on those who couldn't kill the world boss in the beta. So I definitely plan to level up and take down the world boss to get this in the full game. The beta also will give players who missed out on the previous betas another chance to get the special rewards, including the initial casualty title, the super cute beta Wolfpack cosmetic, and the early Voyager title. So if you missed out, you can get to level 20 in this new beta and grab them. Remember, the full game is set to release on June 6th for PC, Xbox, and PlayStation, while this new open beta is starting on May 12th. More than this though, we have more details to go over, including class changes, dungeon tweaks, and more on the endgame. If you do want to know a ton of things in more detail about the endgame systems like capstone dungeons, the Paragon Board, and more, we have a very easy recap already on the channel, which will be linked down below. But for this one, we'll try and keep it to the new stuff so you get more value out of your time in this video. A lot of details were explained that were previously shown already, but there were some new tidbits throughout the recent developer livestream, which lasted almost 2 hours long, so we're going to make that shorter for you guys. The world tiers were explained in a bit more detail, covering how capstone dungeons of course allow you to go up to the next tier, and they advise you be level 50 to complete them. And of course, with an increase in world tier comes an increase in challenge and loot. But the increase in challenge isn't purely higher health and damage numbers for the enemies. They actually explained how the AI for the monster fights will improve as you go higher in the world tier, including giving them new abilities. So as you go up in world tiers, the monsters are going to keep you on your toes. We also learned how item scaling works. From level 1 to 50, the items will slowly scale with you as you progress. However, at world tier 3, sacred items can start dropping. This means items can drop and will have a chance to become sacred. They explained that the level requirements for items such as these will match the level of the player they dropped at, and if you're super lucky, you could even get a best in slot piece of gear as early as level 51. They say it can be usable all the way up to level 70 and can be tradable. So with a bit of luck, they emphasize that the items you get dropping in higher world tiers could be something that you end up using for the rest of that entire world tier progression. They also explained that world tiers 3 and 4 will have more legendary perks available to find. One of the beta concerns was if we've already seen a large amount or all of the legendary effects in the game that they have to offer, and of course we haven't. So if you're like me, you need to get to those higher world tiers as fast as possible to find that good new stuff. One example that they gave that will definitely please the druid mains out there is the confirmation that there are unique items that let you stay in your transformed state. They gave an example of a unique item with a perk that lets you permanently be a werewolf. Furthermore, we saw unique item examples that give straight up damage reduction, skill resource refunds, and overhealing barrier effects. They also showed off some class specific uniques as examples for each class, and I will say the fireball bouncing and exploding perk for sorcerer stood out to me as a possible cool one, but also the barbarian skill that makes death blow into a shockwave AoE and kills still refund its cooldown sounds pretty cool. Also, a stealth werewolf shred build sounds pretty fun as well. They say these uniques are very, very rare and are build defining. We also saw more about the Hell Tides in the game. These are challenging events at higher world tiers where very powerful enemies are present, and it is at Nightmare World tier only. By killing these enemies, you'll gather cinders, which is a resource used to open caches in these Helltide areas. Within the Helltide areas, the caches are actually going to drop specific pieces of gear which you can see above them at different cinder costs, such as a cache to get a weapon or a helmet and so on. So here you can target farm items for a specific gear slot, and these caches are in a fixed location per Helltide spawn. Of course, with it being a higher world tier activity, you're going to get good items, better and unique crafting materials like Helltide roses, and legendary items can drop in these caches and from the mobs themselves. However, these areas are challenging, and dying will cause you to drop half of your gathered cinders. Leaving the area will actually cause you to lose all of your cinders, so don't worry about spending them before the Helltide ends, because they are on a limited timer and the Helltide will eventually disappear. Also, the Butcher can spawn in Helltides, so good luck if that happens to you. We also got to see a bit more on Nightmare Dungeons, and it's set to be a core part of the replayable endgame loop. We're going to use sigils to unlock a dungeon as a Nightmare version, which are earned through the Whispers of the Dead bounties in World Tier 3 and 4, but can also be crafted at the Occultist. The sigils have prefixes that affect how enemies behave in the dungeon, and all of the dungeons in the game can become Nightmare Dungeons, although they are on a rotation. They've said it's a great place to farm your sacred and ancestral gear pieces, as well as upgrading your glyphs, and monsters can go as high as level 150 in these Nightmare Dungeons, so better make sure you have a good build before going into one of those. For the Paragon Board, we also got to see some more details, but it's nothing new that we haven't covered in more detail on the channel already. Basically, they just recapped that nodes will have different rarities, some with more powerful effects and bonuses than others, some requiring thresholds to be met. There's also legendary nodes that are super powerful class-based perks, and they are quite rare too. There are around 10 rare nodes per board, and it gets very costly the more nodes you progress deeper into the board, so planning is needed. Some nodes can also be glyph sockets, and once socketed it will give you bonuses based on nearby nodes, and these glyphs can be leveled up to increase their effect radius. The classes also received some meaty changes. Here's a couple that stood out to me. Barbarians now have a flat 10% passive damage reduction. The Druid Companion skills now deal heavily increased damage. The Necromancer's summoned minions will die more often, requiring you to utilize corpses more often, and the Sorcerer's Chain Lightning damage has been reduced and its effectiveness against bosses has been lowered. So some buffs and nerfs there. They've also listened to player feedback to make dungeons require less backtracking, such as encountering the objectives along the way instead of having to go back and forth. One worry players did have is if the beta skill trees were the full skill trees in the game. They have confirmed that the skill trees at launch are only the beginning, and that new ones will be added and expanded upon, but it is looking like these will be in the form of future expansions. A small detail that's worth knowing though is that different monster types have higher chances of dropping certain types of gear, no matter what class you play. So farming specific items is going to be easier when targeting specific mobs that have a higher chance to drop that item type, but that will require some community effort to find out what mob types drop what types of items. The new beta that's coming up will also feature the launch version of the game in terms of its balance and its build. They did say they will keep listening to player feedback and collect that and make changes after the game has launched too. But make sure to hit that like button down below and subscribe, because we'll keep you up to date on all things Diablo 4. And the two videos on screen now we think you'll really enjoy if you did enjoy this one. Of course, you don't have to click them if you don't want to, but if this video was interesting or helpful to you, then you're probably going to like these ones as well. And then tell us what you think after watching in the comments down below.